A very warm welcome. I am so glad you are here. Let us leave the noise and the hurry of our world behind and allow our minds to travel. Find a place of comfort and let your breath slow, finding a rhythm that is calm and deep. We are about to begin a journey, not just across space, but through the deep strata of time, to a land of stark beauty and staggering ambition. Our destination is the high, arid plateau of ancient Iran, the heartland of what would become the Persian Empire. Imagine, if you will, a vast expanse of earth stretching towards a horizon that trembles in the heat. The sky above is an immense, brilliant blue, punctuated by the sharp, snow-dusted peaks of the Zagros Mountains. This is a landscape of dramatic contrasts, of sun-scorched plains and lush hidden valleys, of whispering winds that carry the dust of ages, and of a profound, enduring silence. It was on this grand elemental stage that empires rose and fell, each leaving behind a testament in stone and brick, an architectural legacy that spoke of power, faith, and a unique vision of the world. This is our story. The Empire of Awe, unveiling ancient Persia's secret architectural wonders. It is a narrative of how a people synthesized the art of 1,000 cultures into an aesthetic of unparalleled grandeur, creating palaces, gardens, and tombs that were designed to inspire awe in all who beheld them. Our story begins long before the rise of the great Persian kings, in the echoes of even older civilizations that first learned to build in this formidable land. Echoes of Elam, early influences, and the birth of the style. Before the word Persia was ever whispered by Greek historians, this land was dominated by an ancient and powerful civilization known as Elam. For nearly 2,000 years, the Elamites were a major force in the ancient Near East. Their kingdom centered in the lowlands of what is now southwestern Iran, a hot and fertile plain that served as a crucial bridge between the great civilizations of Mesopotamia to the west and the diverse cultures of the Iranian plateau to the east. The Elamites were contemporaries of the Sumerians, the Babylonians, and the Assyrians, and their culture was a unique fusion, deeply influenced by their powerful neighbors, yet fiercely independent. It was they who first wrote the language of power in monumental architecture on Iranian soil, and their innovations would leave an indelible mark, a foundational echo that would resonate in the imperial structures of the Persians centuries later. To understand this foundational style, we must travel to the heart of the old Elamite kingdom of Khuzestan. Here, rising from the flat, sun-baked plains, is a structure of such scale and peculiar form that it seems almost an apparition, a man-made mountain dedicated to the gods. This is Chaga Zanbil. Its name in the local language means basket mound, a humble name for what was one of the largest and best-preserved ziggurats ever built. Constructed around 1250 BCE by the Elamite king Untash-Naparisha, Chaga Zanbil was not a city for the living, but a sacred, holy precinct, the spiritual heart of his kingdom. Its primary purpose was to honor the bull god of Susa in Shushanak, one of the primary deities of the Elamite pantheon. Let us approach it in our minds. A ziggurat does not reveal its complexity all at once. From a distance, it appears as a single, massive, pyramidal structure. But as we draw closer, we see that it is, in fact, composed of 5 concentric square layers, each one smaller than the one below, rising to a high temple at its summit that is now lost to time. Unlike the ziggurats of Mesopotamia, which were typically built with exterior staircases leading directly from the ground to the top, Chaga Zanbil's design was more mysterious, more private. The stairways were hidden within the structure, accessible through vaulted passageways, creating a sense of an inward sacred journey, a pilgrimage from the outer courts to the inner sanctum. The core of this colossal structure was made of humble mud brick, the most common building material of the plains. But the entire ziggurat was then encased in a protective and decorative facade of millions of baked bricks. This was an immense undertaking, requiring vast amounts of fuel to fire the kilns, a testament to the king's command of resources and labor. What is most remarkable is that every fifth row of these baked bricks on the outer walls was inscribed with cuneiform script. The same dedication, stamped over and over, declares the king's purpose. I, Untashnaparisha, son of Humban Nuina, king of Anshan and Susa, desirous that my work should be an object of continuous grace for Inshushinak, have built a ziggurat of baked brick. The inscription goes on to place a solemn curse upon anyone who would dare to damage or destroy his creation, their line to be cut off, their seed to perish from beneath the sun. These bricks are a story in themselves, a permanent prayer, a king's voice, literally baked into the fabric of his monument. The structure was a symbol of the entire Elamite realm, with temples not only to Inshushinak, but to a host of other gods from both the lowlands and the highlands, brought together in a single, unified sacred space. Chaga Zanbil was a political statement, an architectural representation of a unified kingdom under one divine protector and one earthly king. It established a key principle that would echo through the ages: the monumental, elevated platform as a symbol of divine and royal power, a sacred mountain lifting the king and his gods above the mundane world. While Chaga Zanbil was a city of the gods, the nearby city of Susa was a vibrant metropolis for the living, one of the oldest continuously inhabited cities in the world. For millennia, Susa was a crossroads of commerce and culture. Excavations there have revealed layer upon layer of history, including a massive raised acropolis, a citadel where the palaces and temples were built high above the rest of the city. Here again, we see this foundational concept of elevating the important structures, a physical separation of the sacred and the secular, the powerful and the common. The palaces at Susa, built of mud brick, would have been decorated with vibrant glazed brick panels depicting mythological creatures and royal processions, an art form that would later be perfected under the Persians. The legacy of Elam, therefore, was twofold. It was the idea of sheer scale, of building man-made mountains to connect with the divine, and it was the tradition of the elevated acropolis, a fortified platform upon which the drama of the state would unfold. As Elamite power began to wane in the first millennium BCE, a new people rose to prominence on the Iranian plateau, the Medes. Their architectural legacy is more elusive, known to us through tantalizing archaeological fragments and the vivid descriptions of Greek historians like Herodotus. The Medes were skilled horsemen and warriors who forged a powerful confederation of tribes, establishing their capital at a site the Greeks called Ecbatana, modern-day Hamadan. Herodotus describes Ecbatana as a city of immense splendor and sophisticated design, a wonder of the ancient world. He writes of a great citadel built on a hill, encircled by 7 concentric walls. In a detail that speaks to a deep sense of cosmic order, Herodotus claims that each of the 7 walls was painted a different color, the 2 innermost walls being plated in silver and gold, with the outer walls colored in white, black, scarlet, blue, and orange. These colors were said to represent the 7 celestial bodies, the sun, the moon, and the 5 known planets. While this account may contain a degree of legendary embellishment, it reveals a core concept: the use of architecture to create a microcosm of the universe, a perfectly ordered city reflecting the harmony of the heavens. It suggests a move toward a more symbolic and cosmologically aligned form of urban planning. Archaeology provides a more tangible, if less spectacular, glimpse into the world of the Medes. At a site called Tepe Nush I Jan, high on a windswept outcrop in the Zagros Mountains, archaeologists uncovered a Median religious and administrative complex dating to around 750 BCE. The buildings were made of mud brick, and their state of preservation is remarkable. One structure, identified as a fire temple, is particularly striking. It has a unique diamond-shaped central sanctuary with a stepped altar at its heart, likely used for the veneration of fire, a central element in early Iranian religion that would later become a cornerstone of Zoroastrianism. But the most significant structure at Tepe Nushai Jan, in terms of its architectural legacy, is a building known as the Columned Hall. Here, for the first time on the Iranian plateau, we see the architectural feature that would become the defining characteristic of Persian imperial grandeur. The hall was a large, rectangular space, its flat roof supported not by thick, load-bearing walls but by a forest of 12 slender wooden columns, arranged in 3 rows of 4. The columns themselves are long gone, but their stone bases remain, and impressions in the soil tell us they were simple, tapered wooden pillars. This innovation, likely borrowed from the architecture of neighboring Urartu or Assyria, but adapted by the Medes, was revolutionary. It allowed for the creation of vast, open interior spaces, perfect for holding large audiences and conducting courtly ceremonies. This was the birth of the hypostyle hall in Iran, the prototype for the magnificent apadanas of Pasargadae and Persepolis. The Medes had invented the architectural language of the royal audience. Further evidence of Median architectural traditions comes from their tombs. In the mountains of what is now Iraqi Kurdistan, a number of impressive rock-cut tombs, such as the one at Quicapan, are believed by many scholars to be of Median origin. These tombs feature facades carved directly into the face of a cliff, with columned porticos that mimic the entrance to a palace or temple. We see carved reliefs of figures, perhaps priests, flanking a fire altar. This practice of carving monumental tombs into living rock, of creating an eternal home for the ruler within the sacred body of the mountain itself, is another tradition that the Persians would adopt and elevate to an art form of sublime and terrifying majesty at Nakshi Rustam. And so, by the middle of the 6th century BCE, the architectural stage was set. The Iranian plateau was not a blank slate. It was a land rich with architectural memory. From the Elamites came the legacy of the ziggurat and the Acropolis, the concept of achieving monumentality through sheer scale and elevation, of building artificial mountains to assert power and connect with the divine. From the Medes came the fortified citadel, the symbolic use of color in cosmic planning, and most critically, the 2 core elements of the future imperial style, the columned audience hall and the rock-cut tomb. These were the echoes, the foundational ideas waiting in the very soil and stone of the land. They were waiting for a new power, a new visionary, to synthesize them, to gather these scattered threads and weave them into a new and glorious tapestry. That new power was rising in the south, in the Elamite highlands of Anshan, a people known as the Persians, led by a man named Cyrus. He would take these ancient whispers and amplify them into an imperial shout that would echo across the known world. Imperial Grandeur, Persepolis, and the Achaemenid palaces. We now arrive at the dawn of a new age. The scattered echoes of Elam and the nascent forms of the Medes were about to be gathered and forged into an architectural language of unprecedented scale and symbolic power. This was the work of the Achaemenid dynasty, founded by Cyrus the Great, a ruler whose vision was as vast as the empire he conquered. His was to be an empire not just of subjugation, but of synthesis, and this philosophy found its first and perhaps most serene expression in stone at his new capital, Pasargadae. Let us drift across the flat, fertile plain of Merga to the site of Cyrus's city. What is immediately striking about Pasargadae is its sense of space. Unlike the densely packed cities of Mesopotamia, Pasargadae was conceived as a collection of elegant, discrete buildings set within a vast, irrigated park. This was the physical manifestation of the Paradise, the original Persian garden, a concept we shall explore more deeply later. Here, architecture and landscape were one. Palaces did not loom over the inhabitants. They were placed gently within an ordered, man-made paradise. The overall feeling is one of tranquility, of a confident and peaceful power at ease with itself. The buildings of Pasargadae are the first chapter in the story of a new imperial style. At the entrance to the ceremonial precinct stood a monumental gatehouse. Though now mostly ruined, we know from remnants and descriptions that it was guarded by colossal winged bulls with human heads, the protective spirits known as Lamassu, a clear borrowing from the Assyrian palaces of Nineveh. Yet here, they were subtly different, rendered with a Persian sensibility. This was not mere copying, it was appropriation. It was Cyrus declaring that the power and traditions of the ancient Mesopotamian kings now belonged to him. Further inside the precinct were two columned halls, an audience palace and a residential palace. Here we see the Median prototype transformed. The columns were now more slender, more refined, their black and white stone segments creating a striking visual contrast. The architecture was a deliberate fusion of styles. The column bases and fluting showed the influence of Ionian Greek artisans, while other decorative elements hinted at Egyptian forms. It was a multicultural mosaic, a statement in stone that the Persian Empire was a cosmopolitan entity, built by the skills and talents of all its subject peoples, Lydians, Babylonians, Egyptians, and Greeks, all working together under the direction of a Persian master plan. Even in death, Cyrus projected an image of powerful simplicity. His tomb, standing apart from the main palaces, is an architectural masterpiece of quiet dignity. It is a small gabled stone chamber set atop a simple six-stepped stone platform. Its form is eclectic, possibly influenced by Lydian or Ionian funerary monuments, or perhaps even a stylized memory of an Elamite ziggurat. It is modest in size, yet it possesses an immense gravity. It is the tomb of a world conqueror who chose to be buried not in a monument of overwhelming scale, but in a simple, elegant house for eternity, forever watching over the garden city he had founded. If Pasargadae was the serene dawn of the Achaemenid style, the city of Persepolis was its blazing, awe-inspiring noon. Founded by Cyrus's successor, Darius I, around 518 BCE, Persepolis was conceived on an entirely different scale and with a different purpose. It was not a residential city or a typical administrative capital. It was a magnificent ceremonial stage, a sacred precinct built for the express purpose of dazzling the world and celebrating the divine order of the Persian Empire. Imagine arriving at Persepolis in its glory. First, you would see the immense platform upon which it is built. Darius, taking the old Elamite concept of the Acropolis to its ultimate conclusion, chose a location at the foot of a mountain the Persians called Kui Ramat, the Mountain of Mercy. His engineers carved out and built up a vast stone terrace, some 125,000 square meters in area, raising the entire city 12 meters above the plain. To ascend to Persepolis, one climbed a monumental double staircase. The stairs were deliberately designed with wide, shallow steps, so shallow that nobles on horseback could ride up them. The ascent was slow, processional, a gradual transition from the ordinary world to the elevated realm of the King of Kings. At the top of this staircase, you would enter the Gate of All Nations. This colossal structure, built by Darius' son, Xerxes I, was a square hall with 4 soaring columns supporting its roof. Its entrances were guarded by pairs of immense lamassu, even larger and more powerful than those at Pasargadae. These divine beasts were the gatekeepers to the Imperial world. Above them, carved in the 3 official languages of the Empire Old Persian, Elamite, and Babylonian, was an inscription proclaiming Xerxes' authority and his divine mandate to rule over the many peoples of his empire. Every ambassador, every tribute bearer, from the shores of the Aegean to the banks of the Indus, had to pass through this gate. It was an architectural act of submission and inclusion, the formal entry point into the Persian world order. Passing through the gate, the visitor would emerge into the heart of the complex, and here they would be confronted with the architectural feature that defined Persepolis, the Apadana, or the Great Audience Hall. This was where Darius and his successors would receive the delegations from across the empire. It was a colossal hypostyle hall, a forest of stone. 72 slender, fluted columns, each soaring over 20 meters into the air, supported a vast, flat roof made from the prized cedars of Lebanon. The effect would have been overwhelming, creating a sense of being diminished, of being humbled in the presence of overwhelming power. The columns themselves were a unique Persian invention, a masterpiece of cultural synthesis. They rested on bell-shaped bases inspired by Egyptian lotus flowers. Their tall shafts were fluted like Greek Ionian columns, but it was the capitals that were truly distinctive. These were complex, multi-tiered structures, topped by the sculpted foreparts of 2 animals' bulls, lions or eagles crouched back to back. These powerful animal protems acted as brackets, their backs supporting the massive wooden roof beams. The engineering was as brilliant as the artistry, allowing for a vast interior space, light and airy, yet utterly monumental. But the true story of the empire was told on the stairways that led up to the Apadana. Here, in kilometers of exquisitely carved low relief, is the enduring legacy of Persepolis. The carvings depict an endless rhythmic procession. First come the elite Persian and Median guards, the immortals, in their formal attire. Then, group by group, come the 23 subject nations of the empire. Each delegation is led by a Persian or Median usher, who holds the hand of the leading delegate in a gesture not of force, but of friendship and guidance. We see Lydians bringing finely wrought metal vases and chariots. We see Babylonians with their humped bulls. We see Scythians from the Central Asian steppes, clad in their distinctive pointed caps, presenting high-spirited horses. We see Ethiopians with their unique curly hair, bringing elephant tusks and a giraffe. Each group is rendered with incredible attention to ethnographic detail. Their clothing, their beards, their gifts are all distinctive. This is not the brutal, violent propaganda of the Assyrians, which celebrated conquest and slaughter. This is a serene, ordered vision of empire. It is a stone-carved census of a peaceful and cooperative commonwealth of nations, all willingly bringing their finest products as tribute to a just and powerful king. It is an idealized portrait of the Nowruz, the Persian New Year festival, a frozen moment of perfect imperial harmony. Beyond the apadana lay other magnificent structures. The hall of 100 columns, even larger in area, though with a lower ceiling, likely served as a throne hall for military audiences and as a grand reception area. There were the private palaces of Darius and Xerxes, the Tashara and the Haddish, smaller in scale but finished with jewel-like precision, their stone walls polished to a mirror-like sheen. Their interior reliefs showed not the public face of the king, but more intimate scenes. The king in procession with his attendants, or heroic contests between the king and mythical beasts. The entire complex was a carefully orchestrated sequence of spaces, moving from the public gate to the semi-public apadana to the private inner sanctums of the ruler, each space designed to evoke a specific emotional response: awe, reverence, and an understanding of one's place in the meticulously ordered world of the Achaemenid Empire. This was architecture as political theater, a breathtaking vision of power and multicultural unity, forever captured in the silent, sun-drenched stones of the Great Terrace. The King's Gardens, paradise on earth and landscape architecture. We have stood in awe before the towering columns of Persepolis and traced the solemn processions carved into its stone. We have felt the immense weight of an empire designed to humble and inspire. But now, we must turn from the monumental architecture of imperial ceremony to an element of Persian design that was perhaps even more profound, more influential, and speaks more intimately of the Persian soul. We step away from the sun-drenched stone of the great platforms and into the cool, dappled shade of the king's garden. This was not merely a decorative afterthought, a pleasant space next to a palace. In the Achaemenid worldview, the garden was a central component of architecture itself, a planned and engineered space that was as fundamental to the expression of power and ideology as any columned hall. The very word we use for a place of perfect bliss, paradise, is a direct inheritance from the ancient Persians. It comes to us through the Greek historian Xenophon, who transliterated the old Persian term paradisa. The word literally means a walled enclosure. At its heart, this concept is about separation, about creating a deliberate boundary. It is the act of drawing a line in the arid, often hostile landscape, and declaring that within this wall, a different world will exist, a world of order, abundance, and tranquility, created and sustained by the will of the king. The paradisa was the antithesis of the wild, untamed nature that lay outside its walls. It was paradise enclosed, a microcosm of the empire itself, a diverse, peaceful, and productive realm, protected and ordered by a single benevolent authority. To create such a paradise in the dry climate of the Iranian plateau was a monumental feat of engineering, one that relied on a technology of almost magical ingenuity. The Qanat. This ancient system of water management is one of Persia's greatest gifts to the world, a testament to a patient and profound understanding of the earth. Imagine a mountain range, its high peaks catching the winter snows. As the snow melts, the water seeps deep into the ground, collecting in the porous gravel at the foot of the mountains, forming a vast underground water table. The Persian engineers, thousands of years ago, figured out how to tap this hidden resource and transport it for miles across the arid plain, using nothing but the gentle pull of gravity. The process began with the digging of a mother well at the base of the mountains, deep enough to reach the water table. Then, with an almost unbelievable precision, they would begin digging along, slightly sloping underground tunnel, leading away from the mother well and towards the location of the future city or garden. To excavate this tunnel and to provide ventilation, a series of vertical shafts were dug from the surface down to the tunnel every 50 to 100 meters. Seen from above, a Qanat system appears as a long, straight line of craters, like a mysterious Morse code written upon the desert floor. These shafts allowed workers to remove the earth and ensured a continuous flow of air. For miles, this hidden river would flow silently underground, protected from the fierce sun, preventing evaporation. Finally, it would emerge at the surface, a miraculous and constant source of cool, clean water, ready to bring life to the parched earth. To create a garden was first and foremost to master the science of the Qanat. It was a declaration that the king's power was not just military or political, but that he possessed the secret knowledge to command the hidden forces of the earth itself to make the desert bloom. Once the water arrived, it was distributed within the garden with a geometric and symbolic precision. The classic form of the Persian garden is the Chihor Bog, or 4 gardens. The space was laid out as a quadrant, divided into 4 sections by water channels that flowed from a central pool or fountain. This was not just a practical layout for irrigation. It was a potent cosmological symbol. The 4 channels represented the 4 sacred rivers of the Zoroastrian paradise, which were said to flow with water, wine, milk, and honey, bringing life to the world. To walk in such a garden was to walk in a replica of heaven on earth. The sound of the water bubbling along its stone-lined channels was the lifeblood of the space, a constant, gentle music that masked the silence of the desert outside and cooled the air. Let us return to Pasargadae, the capital of Cyrus the Great, for it is here that we find the earliest and clearest archaeological evidence of this grand concept. As we noted, the palaces of Cyrus were not clustered together, but were set as individual pavilions within a vast garden enclosure. The layout of the entire site was a char bog. Archaeologists have traced the limestone water channels that crisscross the park, forming the boundaries of this 4-part design. Imagine an ambassador arriving for an audience with Cyrus. They would not enter a forbidding fortress, but would be led through this magnificent park. They would walk along stone pathways, shaded by orderly rows of cypress, cedar, and fruit trees. The air would be heavy with the scent of jasmine and roses. They would pass bubbling fountains and canals, reflecting the deep blue sky. Their destination, the audience hall, would appear not as a dominating structure, but as an elegant pavilion set within this idyllic landscape. The message was one of profound and effortless confidence. It suggested that the king's rule was as natural and life-giving as the garden itself. The contents of these gardens were as symbolic as their layout. They were living collections, botanical microcosms of the empire. The Achaemenid kings would command that exotic trees and plants from every conquered province be brought back to their capitals. Cedars from Lebanon, willows from Mesopotamia, cypresses from the high mountains, and all manner of fruit trees, pomegranates, figs, apricots, pistachios, were cultivated in these royal gardens. They were also home to animals. Xenophon describes how Cyrus would take pride in showing his gardens to visitors. pointing out the perfect, straight rows of the trees and the richness of the foliage. He also describes how these enclosures were used as hunting parks, stocked with deer, wild boar, and other game for the king's sport. The garden was a place of leisure and pleasure, but it was also a living map of the empire, a display of the king's ability to gather the diversity of the world and to impose upon it a perfect, harmonious order. This vision of the garden as an integral part of architecture, as an earthly paradise, would become one of Persia's most enduring legacies. It was a concept that was fluid and adaptable. In the grand palaces, it was an expression of imperial power. But on a smaller scale, the principle of the enclosed courtyard garden became a central feature of domestic architecture throughout the Persian world, a private oasis of tranquility for the family. The sound of water, the shade of a single fruit tree, the scent of flowers within a walled courtyard. This was the essence of paradise, made accessible. The legacy of the Peri-Desa extends far beyond the borders of Iran. When the Arabs conquered Persia, they were so enchanted by these gardens that they adopted the concept wholesale, infusing it with their own Islamic symbolism. The great gardens of Andalusia in Spain, such as those of the Alhambra in Granada, are direct descendants of the Persian Chahar Bagh. When the Mughals, who were of Perso-Mongol origin, conquered India, they brought the concept with them, creating the magnificent tomb gardens of the Taj Mahal and the Shalimar Gardens of Lahore. The very idea of the formal European garden, with its geometric layouts and fountains, owes a debt to this ancient Persian model. The king's garden was more than just a place of beauty. It was a powerful idea, an architectural expression of humanity's deepest longing for a place of peace, abundance, and perfect order. It was a vision of heaven, meticulously engineered and brought to life here on earth. The king's power was not just in his armies and his palaces, but in his ability to be the master gardener, the one who, through wisdom and control of the elements, could create a paradise out of chaos. Beyond the capital, royal roads, bridges, and tomb architecture, we have lingered long in the magnificent ceremonial hearts of the Persian Empire, amidst the ordered tranquility of the royal gardens and the soaring hypnotic forests of columns at Persepolis. But an empire, no matter how glorious its capital, is a living, breathing entity, a vast body whose health depends on the strength of its arteries. To truly understand the architectural mind of the Achaemenids, we must now pull our focus away from the great palatial centers and look to the spaces in between. We must journey out onto the vast, windswept plains and into the rugged mountain passes, for it was here, in the infrastructure that connected their sprawling domain, and in the eternal homes they carved for their kings, that the Persians demonstrated the full scope of their engineering genius and the profound depth of their vision of empire. The Achaemenid Empire was the largest the world had yet seen, a colossal tapestry of diverse peoples and landscapes stretching from the Balkans to the Indus Valley. To hold such a realm together required more than just military might. It required connection. It required a system for moving armies, for collecting tribute, and, most importantly, for transmitting information with speed and reliability. The Persian answer to this challenge was an engineering marvel that commanded the admiration of the ancient world, the Royal Road. This was the great artery of the empire, a highway of unprecedented length and sophistication, running for some 2,700 kilometers, from the city of Susa in the Persian heartland all the way to Sardis, a key outpost near the Aegean coast in modern-day Turkey. Let us picture this road not as a line on a map, but as a living system. It was not a simple dirt track. In many sections, especially in difficult terrain, it was paved, its stones carefully laid to provide a stable surface for travelers. It was meticulously measured, with marker stones placed at regular intervals. But its true genius lay in the system that supported it. The Greek historian Herodotus, who traveled it, wrote with undisguised admiration of the network of way stations, or caravanserai, that were established along its entire length. These stations, he tells us, were positioned at a distance of about a day's journey from one another. Here, a traveler could find lodging, fresh horses, and provisions. The road was policed by garrisons stationed at key checkpoints, ensuring that it was remarkably safe from bandits, allowing merchants and officials to travel with a degree of security previously unimaginable. The primary purpose of this immense investment in infrastructure was communication. The Persians established a royal courier service, the Persian, an express postal system that was the wonder of its age. At each of the 111 way stations along the royal road, a fresh rider and a fresh horse were always waiting. A messenger carrying a royal decree would ride at full gallop from one station to the next, where the message pouch would be immediately handed off to the waiting rider, who would continue the relay without a moment's delay. Herodotus famously wrote of these Persian couriers, "Neither snow, nor rain, nor heat, nor gloom of night stays these couriers from the swift completion of their appointed rounds." This phrase, carved into the facade of the main post office in New York City, is a direct testament to the enduring legacy of this Persian innovation. Through this system, a message from the king at Susa could reach the furthest edge of his empire in Anatolia in as little as 7 to 9 days, a journey that would take a normal traveler 3 months. The royal road was the physical embodiment of the king's reach. It was an architectural statement that there was no corner of the empire so remote that the king's word could not reach it, and reach it with astonishing speed. It bound the vast and disparate territories together with a ribbon of stone and speed, transforming a patchwork of conquered lands into a connected and governable state. Of course, a road of such length must inevitably cross rivers and ravines. While few Achaemenid bridges survive intact, evidence from their construction techniques at Persepolis and accounts from ancient writers tell us they were skilled bridge builders, creating sturdy stone piers to support strong wooden decking, allowing armies and caravans to cross obstacles that would have once halted them for days. This mastery of logistics and engineering reached its most dramatic expression in the famous pontoon bridge built by Xerxes to cross the Hellespont, the strait separating Asia from Europe, during his invasion of Greece. He commanded his engineers to lash together hundreds of ships, creating a floating roadway over a mile long, a feat of such audacious ambition that it was seen by the Greeks as a hubristic act of chaining the very sea. For the Persians, however, it was simply a logical extension of their philosophy. The natural world, be it a desert, a river, or even the sea itself, could and would be reordered by the will of the king to serve the needs of the empire. While the roads connected the living, the Persians reserved their most dramatic and enduring architectural statements for the dead. Having created a vision of paradise on earth in their gardens and a model of the world in their palaces, they sought to create an eternal home for their kings that was both a palace and a sacred monument. For this, they turned not to building up, but to carving in. We travel now to a site a few miles from Persepolis, a place of profound and silent majesty known as Nakshi Rustam, which translates to the picture of Rustam, a reference to a legendary hero from Persian folklore, though its true history is far older and more profound. Here, A great sheer cliff face of pale golden rock rises from the plain like a vast, silent sentinel. It had been a sacred place for the Elamites long before, but it was Darius the Great and his successors who transformed it into an unparalleled dynastic gallery. High on the face of this cliff, far above the reach of any mortal, are carved 4 monumental royal tombs. They are all of a unique cruciform or cross-shaped design, believed to have been first commissioned by Darius I. Let us approach the tomb of Darius and allow its details to slowly emerge. The sheer vertical face of the carving is immense. The lower portion of the cross is left perfectly smooth and blank. This was a deliberate choice, creating a vast, inaccessible surface that lifts the entire monument away from the earthly ground, placing it in a separate sacred realm. It is untouchable, remote, divine. The central section of the cross, the horizontal bar, is a perfect, life-sized replica of the entrance to Darius's palace at Persepolis. We see the distinctive columns, the doorways, the very same architectural forms. The symbolism is powerful and clear. The king's tomb is his eternal palace. The doorway carved into the rock is not a door to a place of decay, but a portal to the afterlife, a threshold through which the king's spirit passes to continue his reign in another, more permanent world. It asserts a continuity between the earthly power of the palace and the eternal state of the king. It is the upper section of the cross, however, that contains the most important ideological statement. Here, we see a large relief sculpture. At its center stands the king, his figure rendered with formal dignity. He stands upon a 3-tiered platform, which itself is being held aloft by 30 figures, arranged in 2 rows. These are not anonymous figures. They are carved with the same ethnographic detail as the delegations at Persepolis. They are the representatives of the 30 subject peoples of the empire, literally upholding the throne of their king. It is a visual metaphor for the foundation of the empire. The king's power rests upon the collective strength of all his diverse peoples. The king holds his bow, a symbol of his royal authority, and raises one hand in a gesture of prayer. He stands before a small fire altar, upon which a sacred flame burns, a clear reference to his Zoroastrian faith. Floating above the entire scene is a mysterious winged disc, from which a human figure emerges. This is often identified as the Father Vahar, a complex symbol representing divine glory, the king's own eternal spirit, or the benevolent grace of the supreme god, Ahura Mazda. The entire composition is a final, perfect summary of the Achaemenid worldview. A divinely sanctioned king, supported by his vast and multicultural empire, piously worshipping in the correct manner, is guaranteed an eternal existence in a palace in the sky. To carve this message into the eternal face of the mountain was to set it in stone for all time. This tradition of using the living rock as a canvas for imperial propaganda was not limited to tombs. Not far away, on the main caravan route that connected Babylonia with the Median capital of Ecbatana, Darius commissioned one of the most important historical documents ever created, the Behistun inscription. Here, on another massive cliff face, high above the road, his sculptors carved a huge relief panel showing Darius as a conqueror. He is depicted in his royal robes, his foot planted on the chest of the defeated usurper, Gomata. Behind the pretender stands a line of 9 captured liar kings, their hands bound behind their backs and a rope around their necks, each representing a rebellious province that Darius had pacified to secure his throne. The Faravehar floats above, once again bestowing its divine favor upon the scene. Surrounding this dramatic tableau are hundreds of lines of text, meticulously carved in the 3 official languages of the empire. This text is Darius's autobiography, his telling of the civil war he fought and won to claim the throne. Its placement on this major thoroughfare ensured that all who passed would see and understand the official story of his legitimate rise to power. For centuries, the script was unreadable, but in the 19th century, it served as the key that allowed scholars to finally decipher cuneiform, acting as a veritable Rosetta Stone for the ancient languages of Mesopotamia. The Behistun inscription is architecture as pure communication, a monumental billboard and an indelible historical record, designed to project the king's authority across the generations. From the practical engineering that bound the empire together to the sublime theological and political statements carved into the mountains themselves, the Persians demonstrated that their architectural vision extended far beyond their capitals, shaping the very landscape of their vast domain into a testament to their power and their unique place in the cosmos. A lasting legacy. Persian influence across ancient civilizations. Our long journey is nearing its end. We have walked the sacred enclosure of Chagazandal, witnessed the birth of an imperial style at Pasargadae, and ascended the great staircase of Persepolis to stand in its forest of stone. We have felt the cool air of the paradise gardens and listened to the stories carved into the eternal cliffs at Nakshi Rustam. Now, for our final chapter, we shall witness the most remarkable magic of all, the afterlife of an idea. For architecture, in its deepest sense, does not truly die. Its forms, its philosophies, and its innovations are seeds that are carried on the winds of conquest, trade, and history, taking root in new soils and flowering in unexpected ways. The legacy of ancient Persia is not confined to the silent ruins of the Iranian plateau. It is a living presence, a powerful and persistent echo in the grand architectural conversation of the world. When the Achaemenid Empire fell to the armies of Alexander the Great in 330 BCE, it was not the end of the Persian story. It was, instead, the beginning of a profound and transformative fusion. Alexander, for all his Macedonian pride, was captivated by the Persian model of kingship and empire. He adopted Persian courtly customs, encouraged intermarriage between his soldiers and Persian women, and envisioned a new Hellenistic world that blended the cultures of Greece and the East. His successors, the Diadochi, who carved up his vast conquests, continued this process of synthesis. The Seleucid kings, who inherited the Persian heartland, ruled not just as Greek monarchs, but as the heirs to the King of Kings. Their architecture reflected this dual identity. Imagine a Seleucid palace. Here, you would find the familiar elements of Greek design, the graceful proportions of the classical orders, perhaps elegant Corinthian columns with their acanthus leaf capitals. Yet the overall plan, the very conception of the space, would feel deeply Persian. The grand columned audience hall, the apadana, lived on. The idea of a sprawling palace complex set within a vast, irrigated park, the Paridesa, remained the ideal expression of royal power and tranquility. The Hellenistic rulers understood what the Achaemenids had perfected. Architecture could be used to manage a vast, multi-ethnic empire. The combination of Greek artistic forms with Persian spatial planning created a new, hybrid style, a visual language for a new kind of globalized world. It was a testament to the fact that the Persian architectural vision was so powerful and so effective that even its conquerors chose to adopt it rather than erase it. Further west, the rising power of Rome had its own formidable architectural traditions. Yet even here, on the far side of the ancient world, the influence of Persia can be felt, transmitted through the intermediary of the Hellenistic kingdoms and through Rome's own long and often contentious relationship with its great eastern rivals, the Parthians and the Sasanian Persians who succeeded them. The Roman concept of the triumphal procession, where a victorious general would parade through the city with the spoils of war, finds a serene and ordered precedent in the tribute processions carved on the apadanas stairs at Persepolis. The Roman taste for grand, axial planning and the use of vast interior spaces for public and imperial functions, while developed independently, was part of a shared ancient dialogue about how to architecturally express overwhelming power, a dialogue in which Persia had been a leading voice for centuries. But it is in the East, with the rise of a new faith and a new empire, that the Persian legacy found its most direct and glorious continuation. When the armies of Islam swept out of Arabia in the 7th century CE, they conquered the Sasanian Persian Empire, the direct inheritors of the Achaemenid tradition. The early Arabs, a people of the desert, had a rich poetic and spiritual tradition, but no history of monumental architecture. As they sought to build mosques for their prayers, palaces for their caliphs, and cities for their new empire, they turned to the sophisticated civilization they had just absorbed. They became the pupils of the Persians, and the result was the birth of Islamic architecture as we know it. Let us stand for a moment in the great courtyard of a classic Persian mosque, such as the Jama Mosque of Isfahan. The very DNA of the building is Persian. The vast, vaulted hall, the Iwan, which serves as a grand entryway into the main prayer hall, is an invention of the Parthians, perfected by the Sasanians. It is a monumental, semi-enclosed space that creates a dramatic threshold between the open courtyard and the sacred interior. The typical 4-Iwan plan, with one of these grand portals on each side of the courtyard, became a signature of Persian mosque design, a direct borrowing from Sasanian palace architecture. The great hypostyle prayer halls of early mosques, with their forests of columns, creating a sense of infinite rhythmic space, are the spiritual descendants of the Achaemenid apadana. The function was changed from a royal audience to communal prayer, but the form, the architectural principle of a vast, column-supported interior, remained. Perhaps the most crucial Persian contribution to the architectural vocabulary of Islam was the perfection of the dome. While the Romans were masters of the dome, they typically placed their domes on circular bases, like the Pantheon. The Sasanian Persian architects solved a much more complex problem: how to place a circular dome gracefully and securely over a square room. Their solution was an engineering marvel called the squinch. The squinch is an arch, or a series of concentric arches, built across the corner of a square chamber. This device effectively transforms the square into an octagon, which is a much more stable base upon which to build a circular dome. This seemingly simple innovation was revolutionary. It unlocked vast new possibilities, allowing for the creation of the soaring, magnificent domes that would become one of the most recognizable and sublime features of Islamic architecture, from Samarkand to Istanbul. Every time we gaze up into the interior of a great mosque's dome, we are witnessing the legacy of a problem solved by an anonymous Sasanian architect over 1,500 years ago. And of course, there is the garden. The Islamic vision of heaven, or Jannah, described in the Quran as a garden with rivers flowing beneath, resonated perfectly with the pre-existing Persian concept of the paradisa. The Arabs adopted the Chahar Bagh, the four-part garden, and infused it with their own deep spiritual meaning. The sound of water, the shade of trees, the scent of flowers, the geometric order, all of these elements became central to the design of palaces, mosques, and most movingly, tomb gardens. When the Mughal Emperor Shah Jahan built the Taj Mahal in India, a monument of Persian-inspired architecture, he set the tomb of his beloved wife in the heart of a vast Chahar Bagh. The garden was not just a beautiful setting. It was an integral part of the monument's meaning, a physical representation of the paradise where he hoped she would rest. From the courtyard gardens of Morocco to the magnificent tomb gardens of India, the gentle soul of the ancient Persian garden lives on. The story of architecture is a story of borrowing and transformation, of ideas flowing across cultures and centuries like the hidden waters of a Qanat. The legacy of ancient Persia is a testament to this truth. It is a legacy found in the concept of a multicultural empire reflected in its art, in the ambition of the great columned halls, in the sublime engineering of the rock-cut tombs, and in the enduring dream of a paradise on earth, an ordered garden of tranquility and abundance. The voices of Cyrus and Darius are long silent, and their palaces are now ruins, standing in dignified silence under the vast Iranian sky. But their architectural vision did not perish. It simply changed its name and its language, living on in the arches of a mosque, the dome of a shrine, and the gentle bubbling of a fountain in a courtyard garden far from the land of its birth. The empire of all they sought to build proved to be more enduring than even they could have imagined, for its truest foundations were not of stone, but of ideas, and ideas, when they are powerful enough, can last forever. Our journey is now complete. We have traveled across a vast and ancient landscape, and through the corridors of time itself. May the stories and the silences we have shared bring a sense of peace and wonder. May the grandeur of these ancient achievements inspire a quiet awe, and may their enduring legacy be a gentle guide as you now drift into the tranquil realm of your own rest.